This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow the Lead podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by Greg Fay Insurance. If you haven't talked to my man, Greg Fay, do so today. Go to gregfayinsurance.com. Today on the podcast, comedian, author, and speaker Chonda Pierce. Chonda shares her story. It's so funny, so good. I think you're absolutely going to love her spirit. And if you do, the highest compliment you can give us, share this episode with a friend, maybe somebody who you know needs to laugh as well. So now, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Chonda Pierce. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have author, speaker, and comedian Chonda Pierce. Chonda, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much. And let me ask you something. Are we just audio or are they seeing my face? Because I have hardly no makeup on. I would have done my hair or something.
There's like 5 people who follow me on YouTube, so you're fine.
No, I wouldn't. No, this is what you see is what you get. Yeah.
Yes, we'll use the video and the audio. So thank you for being vulnerable.
No wonder I'm not dating. I should fix up more. Yeah. Oh dear.
Is that your puppy? How old?
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Zachary. That's our intercom system.
I love it. It. We have the same one in our house. My kids will be home in an hour, and the dog is going to go nuts. So,
oh boy.
Let me ask you this: how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Well, some days I don't want to blame God for any of it. Some days, I think God's going, I'm not sure I called her to that part, I think for me, I had this idea, I got my start at a theme park, I impersonated Minnie Pearl for 5-6 years. And I just, I loved it. I loved comedy. I didn't see myself going into a comedy club. Every time I would think about it or get an invite to it, I didn't do well. It was I would be a duck out of water for sure. I'd never been in comedy clubs, or clubs at that time, ever. And so I was very shy to try to start there. And then early on in my career, I met Mark Lowry, and I didn't even know there was Christian comedy. I just thought I might do a little funny stuff in corporate world or something like that. And then as my testimony grew and as I was comfortable with sharing more, it seemed like the comedy was a great opening act. And that's what it's been for 32 years. It's really been the opening way of getting a group of people's attention and getting it well, and really getting them laughing so that you could leave some kind of nugget of truth. And that's how I've always done my career. Every video I've ever recorded, every tour I've ever been on, every time I've ever taken the stage, I've always known how I want to end. Always. And then I start working my way backwards to either use a song and the comedy and all that to begin to weave that thread. And that's been my MO. I don't know how other comics do it other than I've met a few, that says, hey, we can write together or whatever. And believe me, my manager wishes I would sit down and write a little more. But at this stage in my life, I spend more time just making stuff up on the fly. And then I have someone on my staff going, if they laugh at that, write it down so I'll remember I said that tomorrow.
One of the things I appreciate in this book that you talk about kind of in the author's note is you say that on your tombstone,
you want to have written, there was an elephant in the room and she talked about it. I'm wondering if you could tell us the genesis of that and how somewhere along the way you became a truth teller.
I've always been one that, and I would gotten myself in trouble as a kid. I always my father struggled with mental illness, and I was always the one that pushed back on it. If he was in the pulpit and he said there were 5,000 Israelites, I would point out to him in scripture that it was really just 10. I was just that kind of a weirdo, and I will say, my son has picked that up for me. My son, and my adult son, is like that. Wow. He's always corrected me. Now, Mom, it wasn't $10 at Walmart. It was $5. So it's funny how that's ingrained in me, and then I've passed it on to him. One, that keeps you honest, but two, you don't have. It's not really good for relationships. Because I'm really quick to go, your breath is really bad. But when I saw what God was doing, I read a book a long, long time ago. 2 books that I read early in my career was Experiencing God and Ragamuffin Gospel. Those 2 were powerful. And then I also read Roaring Lambs. Okay, so 3 books. 3 books were so powerful to me in plotting what is this that I'm doing and how do I sustain it and how do I do it well, but how do I do it to glorify God? And I watched Mark Lowry did a good job of that. He always, as he used to always say, take it past the cross before you go home. And I love that. More so for me, I probably get to talk more of the personal things that had to pass by the cross than Mark does. But I think a lot of that's a woman. A lot of times we women get together and we can't wait to talk about our childbirthing scars and our gallbladder problems. So, I get part of that naturally. But I just, early on, and as I got busy and the phone started ringing, I started seeing what God was doing. And so I just wanted to follow along with that instead of push back against it. Or try to help God along and do something else. I just kind of went with the flow. And I'm so grateful that I was able to make a really good living, because he could have led me right to Africa in a thatched hut, which I would have gone, but as a preacher's kid, you're going, but please don't call me there. I need air conditioning, So I just watched what God was doing in my life. And as it grew, I also felt a sense of responsibility to do it well, to do it right, and to to please the crowd and please God. I have as my brother calls it, I have that terrible disease to please, but it makes you a good entertainer because you will really work hard to please your crowd. What you have to learn to do is take that hat off when in your personal life. Yeah.
I've wrestled with this as a pastor and as a podcaster. I can't imagine what it's like to feel the thunderous applause of full rooms like you have. How do you fight the temptation of putting your identity in Christ versus your identity in your profession?
Because if you do it once and fall flat on your face, you will never do it again. I have, during the heyday of Women of Faith, I think I look back at one of the milestones of my life. I was kind of the funny girl of Women of Faith for a while, and loved it, and was able to buy a house. I mean, they pay you every weekend, and then you sell merchandise to 25,000 women a weekend, and I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
And it really blessed me. And so you have 20,000 women laughing at you, and you've got them in the palm of your hand, and they'll cry with you, and then you sing with them, and the Lord shows up, and it's a beautiful thing. If you're not careful, you'll start thinking that you're doing something. Look at me, what I'm doing. What happened to me is I couldn't make a friend there to save my life, and I tried. I bought Christmas presents and sent cards, and and tried to invite them all over to come see me. All the speaker women, come to my house. I'd like to have brunch with everybody, And the time that Women of Faith was in Nashville, I had it arranged. I was hoping they would come to my house, and I could have lunch and I would feel like a part of that team. And a tornado hit downtown Nashville. So if that's not a sign from God, I don't know what is. In other words, as an outcast as I felt with those women and how painful that was, it was absolutely God's direction to keep me humble, for one thing, and to remind me of where I need to find my leadership. And He will send the right people. I learned early on, especially watching other artists, for a while you're an opener for people for a lot. And I saw the ups and downs of artistry, and those were great warning signs. Marriages that failed, of some of the greatest singers and songwriters and people, on the planet. And you watched how that happened. I'm a great observer. That's what if you're a comedian, you observe life well, so you could find the funny, and talk about it. But I saw early on the ups and downs of listening to the wrong people. I was around very egotistical evangelical preachers.
Yeah.
And knew I didn't want to be like that. God just put people in front of me often that I didn't want to be like. And so what that did was help me decide who I wanted to be and how you do that. And one of the things I noticed early on in the touring world, you have to invite accountability into your life. It's not going to just show up. You have to invite your pastor on the bus. You have to invite girlfriends into your life that will understand your job and that will keep you humble and go, now take your fancy clothes off. We're going to go to Walmart, you have to invite that into your life. It's not just going to show up. I saw so often women speakers and other comics and Christian singers and pastors that would rise to a certain level, and then, man, they had the flock, around them, and they were all that in a bag of chips. And then when they fall, none of those people are around them anymore, and they just dropped them like a hot potato. And I knew I want to keep the most sincere people around me as possible. And in that process, the Lord really did send people that were, really high up there. James Robinson will track me down. If I put something online, I remember putting something online not long ago and said, I'm retiring. I'm really tired. It's just time. And a lot of that came out of just a sad spot. I was, missing my husband. He calls me long distance. Chonda, go in there to your laptop right now and take that down. There is no retirement in the kingdom of God, And he's a presence, and he'll scare you to death. So you do what he says, So, but I'm blessed that early on in my life, in my career, God placed people like that I truly trusted, that whatever they said to me, I will do because I trust them. I may not trust where I am with the Lord, but I trust where they are with the Lord.
One of the things I'm always curious about with someone who is as vulnerable and as open as you are, especially in this book where you share so much of your story in such a real way. How did you know when it's safe to share, right? Like, what's the difference between sharing through wounds and sharing through scars, and how do you know the difference?
Yeah, that's a good point. I walked through this writing with my counselor. And she read every chapter. We discussed things. There's a lot we took out. There was a couple of things that I put in there about one of my sisters, and she said, that's her story. Yeah. That's not yours. And she's not here to tell it. And it really doesn't enhance my story whatsoever. It was just something that happened in her life. And so I could not have done that without Tracy Robinson, my counselor. I had great people in my corner reading it. My very best friends, every time I'd finish a chapter, I would send it to them. And sometimes there was correction there. There was, no, really, that wasn't in the spring. Remember, we were in high school and we did this and that. And so I loved that I had that kind of people in my corner to walk through it. There's a lot I didn't put in the book. But for a long time, these stories are old.
Yeah.
Probably the most fresh story is And I was still, and I'm still a little hesitant about it, but I'm trusting publishers and all that were okay. And my counselor was okay with it because she thinks it's a pertinent thing for women. What I learned about protecting myself on a late night driving home, I was sexually assaulted. And so I was so naive to the dating world at that time. I was newly, widowed and about 3 or 4 years in, and what I thought was this is going to be fun. I get to date all over again. Now that I have my own car, and so it is. And I almost didn't put that in because it is very personal. It's very private. I know I'll get backlash over some of it. But I wanted to do it. That was the freshest. But every story in there is things that I've talked about on stage, but I have not yet put them in print. And what's good is everything has had time to simmer. It's had time to get the anger part out of it. The grief, is subdued a little bit, although there was a lot of tears shed rewriting some of this stuff and reliving some of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I was in my counselor's office just about a month ago going, I don't know what's wrong. I don't think my meds are working. She goes, well, you just finished unloading your whole life. You know what I mean? So of course that lingers with you when you lay down at night, and that fragrance of, have I done the right thing? Was God glorified in that? All of that comes to mind when you're laying down late at night going, I hope I did a good job. And it's being printed right then. There were several times I almost wanted to pick up the phone and go, hold the press. But I just decided I am wanting to retire. I know God is doing a new thing, and I don't know what that is, and which is great, because if I did, I would get in there and mess it up. I didn't know what he was doing with me the first time around. So I just know that something's going to look different, and I'm going to slow down. But before it was all said and done, I wanted to get all the words out. It's easy to be in front of a big crowd, and they bought a ticket with your name on it. They're wearing your T-shirt with your name on it. They just bought your DVD with your name on it, And you can tell your stories, and you can see them laugh and laugh and laugh. I've had women come up and show me their wet britches because they peed in their pants, And then you turn the corner and you want to leave them something spiritual or something where the God of the universe has walked you through, some horrible storm, and you want to share that, and you see it work, and it's just beautiful. But what you don't have a chance to say on stage is the in-between of the valleys and the mountains. And there's a whole lot you learn on the slope down and a whole lot you learn on the climb back up. And that's what I wanted to get said.
Hey, guys, just pausing this conversation with Chonda to remind you to check out our partners. The amazing Trent Barga over at the Barga team does such a great job helping you find your next home. Whether it's an investment home, a forever home, or just your next home, call Trent today. He'd love to give you wisdom, insight, and help you find the home of your dreams. Speaking of homes, have you checked out 5 Star Home Services yet? 5 Star does amazing work in the community and also wants to help you with your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical needs. Go to my5starhomeservices.com. Tell them Tony sent you.
Revolutionize your cooking with the Tefal Infrared Air Fryer. Watch as your food crisps up through a large lighted window and delight in faster, crispier, and juicier results with no preheating, thanks to Tefal's advanced infrared technology. Discover the future of cooking and bring innovation into your kitchen by visiting Tefal.com.
I think you're on mute.
Workday's starting to sound the same.
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Now let's finish up this conversation with Chonda.
It's such a
That looks so sad, Tony. Your face just went,
well,
oh.
it's just, here's the thing. I was thinking about
Aren't you glad you're not my pastor?
No, I listen. Here's what I was going to say, and I was trying to figure out a way to say it that it wasn't so. I didn't mean for it to be sad. So there's nothing sad here. It's all for the glory of God. And but here's what I was going to say is that there have been so many situations that have been hurtful to you over your story, and specifically some really complicated situations with men and like your dad, and just a lot. There's just a lot there, right? How do you lean into that?
I've had a counselor
trusting men again, right? Like, I mean, like
it is. I had a counselor tell me a long time ago when I was in a rehab center for my depression that said, "It's really a wonder you're not lesbian." And nobody had ever said that to me before, and I'm like, well, I never even considered it. Like, you mean that's an option? My husband goes, no, I don't think it's an option. Yeah. It is interesting to me when I reading it again, when you know this because you've done it, when you get your pages in the mail and you get to see them in the book. I've been reading it again, because I just want to see it in the book and how it lays in the book. Well, as I'm reading it, to me, the one thing that, there's a lot. My husband, let me just say it this way. I know I'm rattling. My husband was an English teacher, and he was great and a creative writing teacher. And he would always tell his students, and he would tell me when he was always helping me write books and stuff, he would say, show, don't tell. Just show it. Like if you're going to say, I went to Yellowstone. Well, no. Talk about going to Yellowstone, show what that looked like, show what the trees were like, so people will know it's Yellowstone. And so that has always stuck with me as well. And so in this book, I pray the thing that I showed was, man, there must be a God.
Yeah.
Because there's no other explanation. None. Yeah. There is no other. And it's true. I think I've had many pastors say the greatest miracle in my life is that I love the church like I do. And I've had opportunity to go do comedy, secular comedy. When you start getting the numbers like you do and you get an award as the most awarded female comic in history, they'll pull at you a little bit. And I do have some regrets that I would have loved to have done Jay Leno. I would have loved, but I have met him and all that, but I just never, I never went on his show, things like that little things you wish you could. I would love to be a member of the Opry. I don't think I ever will be. Little career things like that. But when I look back at what was accomplished and how it was accomplished, it's a little miraculous to me in that I didn't have the Bill Gaither, world to grow up in. I didn't have anybody, any agent, help or anything like that for a long, long time. But what I did have was this desire to hold a mirror up in front of the church, not out of judgment, but out of begging them to be better.
Yeah. Because
of my kids and my grandkids. I want my neighbors to see the church I see in my heart, the church that I know that we're birthed to be. And we've gotten not so far off track of that. I mean, all you have to do is just watch CBN. And what? Some church things are going on. That's why you and I laughed before we started the recording going, I just need a sword and a stripper pole now. That's probably going in my act because it is just so bizarre not to.
It has to. Well, I'm not going to.
When we have to open I texted Tim Clinton, who is gracious at the American Association of Christian Counseling, and they have me at all their extraordinary women functions and all that. And I texted him immediately going, that poor guy, he's at the wrong conference. He needs to be at the Extraordinary Women Conference. And he's like, Chonda, you can't say that. But I do. I look at some of the bizarre things we're doing. And my son hollered from upstairs. I was doing another interview a little bit ago with Billy Hollowell. And I said, what in the world do these people think we need? That God needs all these trappings so people will like him. I can stand on the back porch at my landscape and like God. Yeah. I don't have to see a guy swallow a sword, But I just think I love that when we get to heaven, I cannot wait to sit down with Paul and go, okay, now that you saw what the church became, is that what you had in mind?
Amen. What letter would you write us right now?
Yes, yeah. I just think, man, and he's got to be up there. He's got to have pen and paper, Paul does. And he's written stacks about this century alone.
Listen, since COVID, I mean, come on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How quickly we shut our church down. Yeah. Oh my goodness. We still have people afraid to go to church and get germs. It is weird. And I don't know why. It is funny. And I know I'm supposed to have these really great answers so I can really push the book. I don't know why. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how I am so in love with Jesus.
Yeah.
There's just no other explanation that could get me out of bed some mornings. And some mornings it's still hard to climb out of bed. There are trigger days. My anniversary's around the corner, and so there is but I love Jesus too much, to fail him. And the good thing is you really can't fail him, He loves you no matter what you're going to do.
Right.
That's real. That's another thing. That's a whole nother podcast we could talk about.
Anytime. Let me ask you.
Do you know what's so bad when you're raised in a little bit of legalism? The bad thing is I still, like a couple of weeks ago, called my pastor and said, okay, I just need to hear it one more time. Are you pretty sure I'm in? He's like, what? I go, I don't know. The thought hit me and the devil was telling me this and that and said, you remember that thing you did and yesterday you fussed at your son? You think I'm in? Oh, my Lord. He's like, he just rolls his eyes. It's like, he's like, you are this national comic, this Christian speaker everybody loves, and you call me, your little Free Will Baptist pastor, and go, am I in? Am I?
I love it.
And I'm not even a Free Will Baptist. Yeah.
What's it like to live with the pressure of showing up and being funny, right? Like I would imagine that in your world, like that's just an expectation. If Chonda's showing up, she's going to tell a joke, and it almost that's got to be a over. I mean, do you ever just have a day where you can sit around and cry and eat chips?
Watch the world's biggest tennis stars clash in the California desert at the BNP Paribas Open, live on Tennis Channel.
How do they get to these shots?
Tune in daily for exclusive first ball to last coverage from Indian Wells and witness all of the jaw-dropping action as the game's top men and women square off at one of the greatest events in sports. It's tennis magic you need to see to believe. The BNP Paribas Open, live on Tennis Channel and streaming on the Tennis Channel app.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Yes, like right before I called you. I can sit around and eat chips. It doesn't matter if it's a happy day or a sad day, which is what's wrong with my hips. Now, I think I used to feel like I had to be on, and that's what people were expecting. Every green room, I bet I was the most obnoxious person in every green room of every Women of Faith conference, or anytime there's a gathering of really, cool speakers and pastors. I bet I was so obnoxious in those green rooms. It's a wonder, Charles Stanley didn't kick me out every now and then. But I finally exhausted myself. And when you get very, very depressed and you wind up in a psychiatric hospital, you start realizing I have to take care of me because nobody's going to be there when this is all over except me. And so I want to have some kind of mental health, about me and some kind of physical health about me. And so I started getting a lot smarter, a lot quieter. And then life will do that. I brought all of my family to the farm. I sat on the porch and see my entire family, and they're all underground. That will somber you real quickly. I have had so many serious things happen that I don't have to be the life of the party anymore. And a lot of that's just healing.
Yeah.
Healing from that, what we were talking about, that disease to please.
Yeah.
Healing from that, knowing this is who I am, this is all I can offer. And then the smart thing is to surround yourself with people who are not going to expect that all the time. I have the same handful of girlfriends that I've had since I was 15 years of age. We all graduated from high school together, and we get together once a year, our little girls retreat, and have so much fun, and it's a blast. And they would all tell you, all 5 of them would tell you, Chonda's the quietest one.
Wow.
Because I can tell you who emerges to be the life of the party, and it's not me. I love that because they don't expect that. That's what I do for a living. It's not who I am.
Yeah. You have a really...
It has to be that way.
I'm sure, yeah, or else you wouldn't be able to manage it, right? It would be too much.
No, yeah.
I love to listen to mature Christians talk about grief. I think it's something that we don't talk about much in the church, and I'm kind of curious, in your journey, what has the Lord taught you about grief?
That we're all going to have it.
Yeah.
In some form or fashion, some worse than others. There truly are those 5 stages of grief that they talk about, and the anger and the hurt and the being resolved with it. I have had grief of every kind, from sisters to parents to the loss of relationships to. And definitely the hardest was my husband. If you'd asked me that question 3 days after he died, it'd be entirely different than asking me 10 years after he died. Yeah. And because what I hate is every time somebody would tell you, well, give it some time because you just want to slap them. But it's exactly correct. There is no, you know what? Let me tell you something that just came to mind that I've been toying with the idea about. I think what's a shame is sometimes we'll get so far from our grief that it will not affect us anymore. I think sometimes we've gotten so far from the crucifixion of Christ that it doesn't affect us like it needs to. We've seen him hang on paper mache crosses. We've had the light show with the tomb shining through on Easter in our churches. There's been movies made of it. And of course, the harshest one and greatest one was the Passion of the Christ. But in other words, we are so far from our grief from that event in history. We don't grieve it like we should. And I think my grief around my husband, it's been 10 years. I appreciate him so much more now than I did at the time. And I hate that. But I don't blame myself for it because that's just of the devil. That's just shame, Yeah. But that's how it is with everything. You don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. And sometimes I worry that we've let so much time get past us that we don't grieve the death of Christ like we should and understand what he did for us. But when it comes to your loved ones, it's good to let that time pass. Then you can have perspective. You can remember the color of their hair without you crying, Yeah.
I grew up Catholic, so we kept Jesus on the cross most of my life.
Yes, you did.
We got crucifixes all over. My wife and I both. We got crucifixes everywhere.
I used to tell I tell this on the stage all the time that my favorite thing about the Catholic Church is confessional. Mm-hmm. I said, do you know how much money it would have saved me in therapy if I could have just gone in there every week and just vomit it all up? I said, but what do Protestants do? We lie. We just stuff it all in, said we had a great week, Pastor.
I know that there are a lot of leaders who listen to this podcast, and one of the things that I'm passionate about helping leaders do is communicate more clearly. And I heard you in a comedy bit talk about how you're not really a joke teller, you're a storyteller. And so I'm wondering if you can give some some advice to the leader out there, the Christian leader who's listening, who wants to be a better storyteller, where would you tell them to start?
The parables. Man, Jesus was an excellent storyteller. You know, he knew exactly how to set it up in such a way that, and it would turn the corner that you would go, oh, that's the prodigal son. Yeah. Those kinds of things. And that of course is the easy one because they should already know those. Now that was funny. You know, but I would tell them not to hesitate listening to good storytellers, even if they're not pastors. Sometimes we get ourselves in a bubble and we will only listen to people that think like us or look like us or the denomination that's like us. You know, when there is some good in a lot of things and excellent storytellers out there where you could really, really glean from. Now, you might have to weed through some nasty words,
Sure.
But there's books, you know. Comedy Writing Secrets is not a Christian book, but Comedy Writing Secrets is a great book on how to craft a story that's funny. And so that's what I always tell people. Don't think that only God is going to use the fellow pastor in your own denomination. He might use the sunset to help you tell a good story. Yeah.
That's good. In your career, you've done a lot of different things, movies, obviously stand up, writing now, and some musicals. How do you discern what the right yes is for you?
Right now, it's if I'm not going to pass out and die because I'm old. My schedule, you know, man, I look back and I used to do so much at the same time and I just can't anymore. You know, I used to shoot a Hallmark movie, and while I'm on tour, you know, and then zip back onto the bus. I don't do that anymore. I also have a really great manager, and he won't even bring the idea to me if he doesn't read through it and go, this script is stupid. You know? And he's good because he's Jesus's cousin. He's a Jew. And I tease him all the time. My mother used to say, honey, be nice when he's on the bus. Now that's Jesus' blood cousin. And he would just crack up, you know. But a lot of the people in the comedy world are Jewish, you know, and he managed Billy Crystal and Robin Williams and a whole host of people. And how we got together is just a hilarious story in itself. But he is really, really good about what to waste time on and what not. And a lot of it is financial. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. If I don't talk, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
You know, comedians, we don't have hit songs on the radio. All the bits that you hear on Sirius Satellite and all that, nobody's getting a dime for it. And that's up. We're trying to fix that, you know.
Sure.
But so, you know, so I have to work. I have to actually talk to get paid. And so if I'm going to do that, and if I have the mortgage that's not taken care of yet this month, then I consider things. But if it's going to take up 10,000 hours and I'm going to make, when it all settles out, I'm going to make like $1 an hour, I will probably not do it.
One of the things I know about my podcast family is that they absolutely love to pray. And so as this book goes out into the wild, what prayer can we accompany you with in this book?
I think kind of what we just said, that people will see God's faithfulness even when I wasn't faithful.
Yeah.
That they will see the hand of God in a country kid's life that got to do miraculous things that would have never happened without him. Never would have happened without him. That's what I pray that they see. That's the number one thing. I pray that they don't remember the name of who wrote it, but that there was a girl that, man, never let go of God, you know. Sometimes it was a thread, but she held on, yeah.
Praise God. Okay, I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know that the podcast family is going to want to connect with you all over the interwebs. Where is the best place to learn all things Chonda?
Well, probably Facebook, even though I know everybody's kind of phasing out of that, but I still look at my own Facebook page and read the comments and comment back, you know. But Chonda.org is my website, and you can email me through there, and I do read the emails. It takes a while sometimes, but I do get to it. But yeah, that's the best way. That or just tell God and He'll tell me.
little game
So
of telephone with God.
when the ladies come to you at church and say, I think the Lord wanted me to say it. I go, oh, don't tell me. Wait till He tells me, and then I'll call you and tell you when He says it.
That's great. That's great. Last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question where I ask you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice. But I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Okay.
And so I want to take you back to the end of your very first time doing comedy on a stage somewhere, right? And that younger version of you, that young girl, if you could sit knee to knee with her, hold her hands and look her in the eyes, what's the one piece of advice you would give her about the journey she's going to go on?
Set your priorities better. Yeah. I have had to get through the regret, because if you're not careful, too much regret will lead to shame. But I got on the fast track, and I listened to the wrong people, wrong managers, that believed you have to make hay while you can. And I want to go back to them now going, really? 32 years, I'm still doing it. I could have slowed down at the beginning a little bit. So, yeah, I give myself grace, because we were just as excited. We counted every weekend. When I would first start working, David and I, we were like, okay, we got braces taken care of this weekend. Man, that's awesome. We've got 3 house payments ahead. So Dave Ramsey's going to be so proud of us now. That's how we geared success, of the weekend. Look, we got the car paid for. Woohoo. Those kinds of things. But the biggest thing is time. If I could tell that young girl, believe me, you're going to be doing this a long time. Pace yourself.
Wow. That's so good. Chonda, thank you so much for being so vulnerable with your story, so incredibly transparent, so funny, and such a voice for the church. And I just deeply appreciate your gift of generosity today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony, and blessings to you and your family.
What a fun conversation, right? She's got such an incredible heart. I just deeply appreciate the way that she's wired and her ability to tell stories and her faith. Such an amazing woman. I knew you were going to love this conversation. Well, friends, I'm super thankful for you. I'm thankful for the opportunity to connect. I absolutely appreciate the way that you support this podcast. If you haven't signed up for our Life and Leadership newsletter, do so today. You can text the word values to 66866. Get signed up for our newsletter. You can also go to follow2leadcoaching.com. All the information you need is up there. And if you have any questions for me, I'm easy to find at TWMilt, at TWMILT. And remember, guys, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.